Welcome to Invisible Machines, your podcast at the intersection of UX and AI. I'm your host, Josh Tyson, and if you joined us last week, we talked a bit about how to de-appify your thinking, how to stop thinking of technology in terms of point solutions or tools or apps, and start to see it as more of an ecosystem where those individual bits of technology are sequenced together to do bigger things. So in this episode, we're going to talk a bit about the heightened levels of experimentation and risk that businesses and business leaders need to reckon with as they tackle conversational AI. If you're new to the podcast, I'm the co-author of Age of Invisible Machines, a book that I wrote along with Robb Wilson, who is the CEO and co-founder of one of the world's leading conversational AI platforms, OneReach.ai. One of the reasons Robb in particular wanted to get this book out into the world was to help debunk some of the myths surrounding this technology. One of the big myths being that it is an add-on or some sort of bolt-on, that conversational AI is just another app in your ecosystem. And this discussion kind of continues that conversation. So we'll go ahead and get to that in a moment. I did want to mention that next week we have a special guest episode. Greg Vert, who is a principal at Deloitte and has led all sorts of large digital transformations for enterprise, is going to join us to share some of his insights. He's got a lot of interesting ideas and thought leadership, especially surrounding HR and the role that human resources can play in putting technology at the center of an organization. For now, let's go ahead and continue that conversation with Robb that we started last week. Enjoy. So like the businesses that are most proactive about reorganizing themselves and breaking down their internal silos, and I mean, obviously for like tech first companies, this journey's a lot easier, but the businesses that are able to do that more quickly are going to be clearly at an advantage. But is there maybe also some hesitance because of how much it changes the structure of a business? Or I would be surprised if they're thinking about like the idea of a business being obsolete, but I wonder if there's inklings of it, in some of these actions.
You got this challenge in some cases, right? Which is you got people at the higher level that don't have their hands in the technology or the tools every day. So they're sort of depend on the people on the ground that are using the tools to help decide which tools they should use and which tools they shouldn't use. Then you get the people on the ground who get paid to use the tools. And now someone's got to make a decision to change that whole structure, which threatens the people on the ground, right? Many of them. We see that in our business where, a lot of companies have these big infrastructure, telephony infrastructure components and teams that work on them. And, to walk in and say, yeah, none of that's necessary anymore. You don't need it. When those are the teams deciding on the technology that they're going to adopt, you end up in this tough puzzle, right? Which is people who aren't close enough to the tech to really evaluate and architect and figure out how to do this at the top level, making decisions that need to fund it, and the folks at the bottom that come in and look for tools that are more incremental change so they don't see their jobs going away or their jobs being changed dramatically. And so, how does an organization wire around radical change or disruptive change? It's tough. It's a people problem. The technology's there already, but it is a people problem. It takes, technical leadership that can see through the limited view of some of their folks that's, are trying to achieve incremental change. And again, if everyone is in that boat and everyone adopts incremental change as a general approach, it will be fine, right? But if half go fast or 20% adopt at speed, then you're going to have major disruption of those who, are in the incremental change mode. And with each industry, with each solution, it's going to be more and more clear. So, we just haven't seen the first industry pull ahead yet, and kind of create the fear. What we have seen recently, which I find is interesting, it might be hyped a bit, but OpenAI and Google, we're seeing the founders come back. We're seeing a bit of a freak out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny if you look at the companies less technical savvy, they're not freaking out, right? Because they don't know enough to freak out.
Mm-hmm.
Google's freaking out because they can see it, and so that moment of holy, crap, what are we going to do to respond to this? We got to move fast. Each company's going to have their holy crap moment. And it really is blindsiding them, right? I mean, it's so
It sounds
clear.
like within like maybe 5 years, the business landscape could be totally different where,
Yeah.
enterprise companies that have legacies of a century or more might just be gone because they didn't take it seriously enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it can happen to Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, man, like they thought search was, if you went back a year and a half, everybody would have thought they own search. There's no threat. Google's just got this in the bag. No threat on the horizon. In a matter of months, that turned into emergency meetings and founders coming back. At Google, that's going to happen across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, Google's a tech company that's probably been paying somewhat close attention to what
Right.
OpenAI has
They
been
have
doing.
Lambda. Yeah, they have their own
Yeah.
version of it. But like many of these big companies, that is in a silo within Google. The implications not understood by all the different areas, not understood at the high level. And that's the problem. It's understood, but not at the highest level. I mean, it's why we wrote the book, right? It's to try to talk to folks at a higher level and say, hey guys, let's try to help you understand the implications of this technology, so you can manage your company towards this radical change that's hitting you. It's just, in my view, people have been talking about AI is going to come in and change the world. And then they're seeing these, incremental applications of AI, and they're like, it doesn't seem that big, right? The hype. It's because it's not systemic in their mind, right? They're just thinking and looking small, like, oh, I can now see if customers are about to churn based on ML. It doesn't systemically understand that put into a whole framework of conversational AI and everything else suddenly means that, you're on your way to a decentralized organization that's fully autonomous, or at least mostly autonomous, and that's going to happen overnight. And
Google's looking down the barrel of it, and they, as we said, they were aware of at least somewhat what was coming. So, it should be frightening.
And companies like
that
us are trying to help those who see it, right? To sort of come to us with a hurry up, panic. Most companies just head in the sand, no idea this is heading their way. And again, I'm not trying to be, one of those alarmists. I feel like I'm just showing the facts that exist out there. Here's Google. That's just news, right? That's not my news. It's Google news. And if Google's freaking out about, GPT attacking search, what else is on the table?
Mm-hmm.
What other software is on the table? All of our software is on the table. It's just about those kind of low beams, high beams, right? You got Google with its high beams on, seeing it. And then you got most companies with their low beams on. They're like, I don't see anything. I don't see what you're talking about.
Yeah, or they assume that that's Google's problem. And that specifically isn't necessarily their problem, but they're gonna, this is just the first of many of these kind of hyper disruptions that we talk about in the book. Like and what's funny is like how unprepared the world seemed for it.
Yes.
Even people who were so close to it.
Yeah.
Were blindsided by it. So I mean,
yeah. And I think it's partly like, how do you become prepared? I think that's what everybody's asking. Like, great, let me subscribe to your alarmist attitude, right? But okay, now what? Now how do I sign up for doing something about it? Because if I can't do anything about it, then it does make sense. Just put it away and focus on what you can affect. I think that's going to be super hard. I think there's, not a lot of people with a ton of experience in the conversational AI space that you can tap. And as the adoption curve really hits here and more companies are trying to tap those resources, they're going to, be very scarce. They're already scarce. They're going to become incredibly scarce. And it's an interesting dichotomy, I think, because you've got a world where robots and machines are going to take over a lot of the jobs that we do today and a lot of the tasks that we do today. But what's preventing that from happening at scale is people to implement the automation. So we have a human capital issue where we don't have enough people to help companies automate. Otherwise, automation would be scaling faster, and adoption will be limited by the number of people who are educated on how to pull this off. So it's, training
and it's
on
happening
this stuff.
and it's happening at a time where people are really rethinking what work means to them. Like, what place in their life does productivity or a job or a role or a title really have?
Yeah.
And that adds a lot of
Absolutely
intrigue to the stew.
Yeah. The paradigm of I evaluate myself based on my productivity, being questioned, which we know each generation questions that more and more and more, right? How many generations calls the generation below them lazy, right? It's just, it's almost a cliche. It is a cliche, right? So, but what's really potentially happening here is they're like, my measure as a person shouldn't be what I produce. Should be like how I am as a parent, my relationships with other people, the quality of those relationships, the quality of my contribution to society as a whole in a creative way. These are things that fuel us, and how many widgets I can produce in an hour. Just, no one's on their deathbed wishing they could have produced more widgets.
It's like we table all these things that are really important to us as humans, as biological entities, in the name, for the sake of productivity, which is strange, which is also like, it's something that's baked into business culture, but I think
totally
it's baked into Western
employee
culture.
Review, right? Your employee review comes along and they say, hi, you're going to get a raise because you produced more than anybody else. How do you not, go home and think, oh, that matters. That defines me. You've been rewarded. You're now like competing against other people on the basis of your productivity, and you're winning. So based on the fact that you're winning, you start valuing it as a thing, and you start defining yourself within that value. It just makes perfect sense. But in honesty, like, does it? Do we really get fueled by that? Is it truth? Is that at the core of how we define ourselves at the end of the day when we die? Or is it those connections and family members and You know, we
Yeah.
retire. I mean, that's a thing, right? That used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of that is you retire your measure of productivity.
One also sort of means like you're done doing all the annoying shit that
Right.
that you didn't
Yeah.
enjoy for 50 years or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like a thing to
Yeah, and it's
stop
interesting.
doing work you
It's
don't
like
like.
hyperautomation is almost bringing business concerns down and elevating human concerns
Yeah.
in a way. Like I think long term, that's what it has the potential to do, which
Yeah.
again is like sort of bad for the traditional sense of what business is.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's friction that's maybe clear and present right now, but it feels like that's underneath a lot of this, and
Yeah.
whether realizing it or not.
Yeah. We congratulate people for retiring. Oh, you're retiring early. Good for you. But then we're afraid of machines taking our jobs. It's just
Yeah. But then
so
there's a lot of
funny.
people who don't really ever retire because they do work that is
Right.
super meaningful to them.
Right. Because
And
it's not about what you produce, and you're able to produce effortlessly, while into, nearing the end of your life, cognitive abilities. So yeah, it's a new world though. I am fascinated. I'll be watching closely on the Google stuff to see, panic, boardroom. Now, what do they do? What is the action that they take next? How does this, how do these meetings unfold into a strategy? And what does that strategy look like?
what's the big pivot?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And how does that happen? Is it a restructuring of the company? Is it a reallocation of capital? Is it all of the above? Is it, culturally them having to relook at the fear of failure within their org and understanding that, that's driven or hampered innovation? Where does this all go? But when I see founders coming back, what I see is, we need people who aren't afraid to fail. We need people who will come in here and take risk and chances. So, whether that lies with founders or not, I think the underlying message is clear. We need to take more risks. We need to take more chances. This idea of creating a low risk strategy for running the business, the mutual fund of corporate strategy to preserve, value in the company, like capital preservation and wealth preservation as a motion for large businesses and enterprises, suddenly it ends up in being the best way to lose your wealth. Wealth preservation now becoming and diversification strategies and low risk mitigation strategies with lots and lots of tiers of approvals, etc., all ending up being the Achilles heel of being able to succeed as a business. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's like,
I will be watching. I think I won't be surprised if it does look a lot like what we talk about in the book. Just a lot of experimenting, a lot more risk taking, and cutting the red tape, so to speak.
yeah, I mean, you might have answered this question already just now, but if there was one realization that you could sort of snap your fingers and all of a sudden every executive at every company that you talk to had this realization, I mean, what would that be? Is there one thing you wish they just understood? Because I mean, the complexity of it all is almost too daunting.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's an entry point.
Yeah, if there's one thing for them to understand, it's that they can't depend on other portions of the business to solve this problem or avert this issue. It's looking at Google, same thing. You can't trust that your engineering team or your people, your feet on the street are going to actually guide you around this one. You got to get involved yourself. They just don't have permission to fail at the level in which and take the risks that need to be taken. So you need these people that have, at the higher levels, that have been granted the permission to take big risks, to take $1 million, $2 million, $3 million risk, and fail at it and not lose their jobs. These people have to come in and they have to take those risks. They can't defer that risk downward. Let, the feet on the street make that decision and then absolve themselves of responsibility because it wasn't their call, which happens in a lot of cases, right? It's going to be people that can make decisions directly on the phone with vendors like us, involved in those meetings, listening, reading their team, watching the fear, taking the responsibility onto their own shoulders and saying, look, guys, like if this fails, it's on me. All I need from you guys is to just try your best. And then a lot of, diversification in terms of experimentation. Don't try one, try them all. Don't try one tool, try all the tools, especially in the conversational AI space. So.
It's like someone has to step up and kind of be willing to fall on the sword, because like that it's not one of those situations where you can copy something your competitor does well and hope to outfox them that way, because if they've proven themselves at all, like with a success, they're going to build on that and they're going to be so far ahead of you.
Yeah. And you don't say, hey, go find a vendor for us in conversational AI. You need to be in those meetings. If you're a senior person, you need to be listening. You need to elevate the conversation from features and functionality to overall strategy and big thinking, not incremental thinking. How does this tool, ultimately, change at a systemic level? And then that systemic thinking, getting your folks to think systemically. I want big shifts, not small shifts, big change, pushing them on big change. And then the last piece, which is what I see a lot, is show me the 10 other big companies that you've succeeded at doing this with. Like, well, by the time that happens, it'll be too late. You're gonna have to go on trying to be one of those first. I've heard this from a number of people. We don't want to be guinea pigs on any software. Like, well, if you don't want to be the guinea pig, you've pretty much decided not to innovate by the sheer nature of that statement. So you're gonna have to hope to be the guinea pig. I think what we'll see come, a year or 2 years from now, and we already see it a bit at OneReach, is, companies will be begging to be on the guinea pig list. This idea that companies are in the driver's seat, because they have the money, because of the limited number of people with expertise, you're going to see a huge scarcity in being able to provide people and vendors and tools and support for the number of companies that are going to be migrating from a traditional software to an AI-based system. That getting on the list will be the hard part, and there'll be plenty of charlatans out there that are willing to sell people who don't know what they're doing, and it'll be very difficult to find out who's actually done it. We always say at OneReach that an expert has to have at least done 10 production implementations that delivered better than human experiences. Not too many people can say that, and so should be a crazy time coming up here. Exciting, and as we get past the discomfort of the change, but exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there's some real freedom and massive reward for people who are willing to take the plunge.
Yeah.
But couldn't be a scarier time to do that. So.
Yeah. Will it be the small companies? Will it be the big companies? Will it be the startups? They'll be
Yeah,
the
the
Googles.
business
Who
landscape is
knows?
going to be an interesting blend of things in the coming years.
Yeah. Yep. Glad to be in it than a bystander watching it, feeling
Yeah.
hopeless.
Yes.
I'm
That is
scared
the more
too,
comfortable.
along with everybody else, but at least I have the calm of having my fingers in it and feeling an illusion of control.
Yeah, and what's really scary is the right people not doing it sort of the right, or at least close to the right way now.
Yeah.
Because if the wrong people do it the wrong way, our world looks a lot different, and not just in a business sense, like
Yeah. True.
in the Terminator 2 sense, I suppose.
Right.
All right, thanks again for listening to Invisible Machines. Don't forget to subscribe to UX Magazine wherever you get your podcasts to hear new episodes. You can also watch new episodes on the Invisible Machines YouTube channel. Next week, as I mentioned, we've got Greg Vert on the show. Greg is a principal at Deloitte who has done all sorts of remarkable work in digital transformation for enterprise. You're not going to want to miss that one. As always, I'd like to thank the marketing team at OneReach.ai for all your help and support. And thank you to Michael Litvinov, our video editor. Thanks again for watching or listening, and we'll catch up with you next week.